Saat ini, Anda sedang mendengarkan Radio Era Baru, Green Radio Line, Beyond the Limit.
Hi, Anggun. Now we are be able to just talk to Miss Anggun Citra Berlian. She's from, she's doing her study in USA, America. Like now she is speak as an aspiring environmental and also inclusivity advocate. And today we will start the interview and doing some interview with our diet, our futures, and also how they are intertwined. I really thank you. I would like to say thank you for letting us to talk to you and give us your, precious time to just share your story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to discuss more. And then I believe that not only that I will share, but also I can learn something from this experience.
Okay, amazing. So maybe before we are continue our our discussions, I would like to say to introduce myself first. My name is Livia Octaviani. I'm one of the broadcasters in Green Radio Line itself. So right now we are interviewed to the program BUMI Kita program, or we say it in English like our Earth program. So here we will share about the environment issues from internationals, nationals, and also the local issues. And maybe you can introduce yourself to our listeners, please.
Okay, yeah. My name is Anggun Citra Berlian. People call me Anggun. I am from Blitar, East Java, Indonesia. I am now in San Francisco, studying at Minerva Schools at KJI. I am in my senior year. And before living here, I was living in 5 different countries other than the US. I was living in South Korea, India, Germany, and Argentina. And what else did I say? I am interested in environment. So one is green energy, and other things is plant-based diet, which we will talk more today. And another things that I'm interested as well is inclusivity and diversity. How can we bring more non-males, so females and then women identifying individuals to the stage so that they can be heard and they can also contribute meaningfully to the society and be more accepted as well.
Okay, thank you so much. And what are you doing exactly? I'll say that you are a student there, and you're about your activity in US itself, please.
Yes, like when mainly I'm studying business and economics. Mm-hmm. And other than studying, a lot of times I'm also doing internship, also projects within the city. So for example, I was working with San Francisco city government in my first year in San Francisco, talking about and then working on trash can. So trash can systems and how can we better the design of the trash can, and then what are ways that we can do so that our trash can management can be better. So those are the things that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Other projects that I did was related to impact investing, education and technology, and the last project that I did was about healthcare and AI.
Okay, good. And I'm really curious about the reason why you are choosing to just continue your study in America itself, and also specifically in San Francisco. Why? What is the reason?
Yeah, so interesting question because I was actually already studying in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. So I was studying international relations at Universitas Indonesia for 2 years, which I was so happy. Met a lot of great professors, also a lot of good friends. But something that really struck me is from Minerva is the idea of like how can we find the right problem to be able to solve them? How can we try to learn how to learn first before really solving anything? And then that kind of like wisdom, and then the idea that to unlearn things and then to build things up again really caught me. So I decided to resign from UE and then restart my degree in 2017, which I think is fulfilled because again, through Minerva, I got to travel through these different countries, which I work with local organizations, just like the trash can project that I told you in different countries. So that one that I told you was when I was in San Francisco, and when I was in Seoul, South Korea, I work with one of the NGO under the UN on social technology. So working on similar to incubators and hackathons.
Okay.
So we bring startups from all over Asia Pacific to Seoul, and then to compete, and then find like which one is the winner, which we can invest on to better our cities. So city management most of the time. Yeah.
Okay, good. You know, like, you know that we are in the middle of the pandemic right now. The COVID-19 is getting worse right now. And how is the situations in America itself? Well, how the pandemic affect to your daily activity, or also the people there?
Well, I think it's a known fact that the US didn't handle the COVID really well. So it's like one of like the most terrible handling countries in the world, which is really sad. But I think it is getting better, especially like in the area that I'm living in, because you know the US is so huge. So if you kind of stretch the map of Indonesia to the US, it's the width is the same width, but just like it's longer kind of. So
Okay.
it's a whole continent. So I cannot speak for all of the states in the US, but for California itself, it is like one of the states in the US that is like most effective in handling COVID. Like very early close the offices, and then people are more open to the idea of wearing masks, because wearing masks turned out not to be just like a common sense, but people also oppose the idea of wearing masks in some states. So yeah, so it's pretty good in the area that I'm living in.
Okay, good, amazing. And yeah, related to the topic, we're going to our topic right now. And from your point of view yourself, how is the diets that impact to our futures? I'm really curious of how it impacted, and then why this is kind of important things to be talked about.
Yeah, so it's a big question. I think there's like the whole idea of like this kind of like podcast or like this interview. But to start off is that what we eat, like our diet, is linked directly to climate change, and it's something that we cannot deny, because I think there's like a lot of like articles already cite this, but the fact that animal agriculture, especially beef productions, is linked to methane production, which methane productions is this gas that traps more heat in our atmosphere and then create like this global warming. And that kind of like methane productions is much more harmful, and then it's a lot more than other kind of gas that is polluting our atmosphere, more than cars, ships, airplanes, trucks, whatever kind of transportation that we can think of. So I think there is like one big thing that is very tangible and is in front of our eyes, that it is something that is happening. Yeah.
And why is this important to just educate people about these issues, about what we eat will impact to our futures? From your point of view, why, please?
Oh, like one, it is a very real problem, and then the impact of global warming is already happening all around the world. I think one thing that I can think of is like the flooding in Jakarta in the beginning of the year. So it is a combination of multiple factors that kind of disaster happened. Perhaps it's like the city management or like the architecture, and a lot of different things. But we also have to understand that it's part of it is climate change. We don't have enough trees to actually hold the water from Bogor, for example.
Yes.
And another thing that is happening worldwide is forest fires. Where I am right now in California, there's like multiple spots of fires, which even like as we are speaking, some fires are still burning for weeks, if not months. And also in the beginning of the year, there's also forest fires that is not only caused by the warming itself. So in California, for example, the fire started because two things. Like one is because the heat, so the air is like really dry and really hot.
Yes.
So the friction just create fire. So that's one. Another thing is also like human faulty, for example. So there is this kind of tradition in the US gender reveal party. So someone's pregnant and then, oh, is it a boy or girl? And then they create some kind of like explosion party, and then that also spreads fire. So that one is very, very unfortunate. But another things that I was trying to say is like early in September, there's also a big fire in Brazil.
Okay.
Which is not from that kind of like global warming indirectly from the hot air, but because people purposely set fire on these forests so that we can have more land to grow cattle. So yeah, I think it's important because as we're losing all of like this nature, it is kind of like a reverse card on Uno. Like you're harming the environment, you're harming the animals, and then we like all of these bad things are happening to us. Where I am right now in San Francisco, when the fires were so bad a couple weeks ago, I woke up and it's pitch dark. It's really dark. It's all black and orange, and it's because the fire was so close. And also the air quality was really bad for a couple of days. So the thing is, if we don't talk about the environment right now, if we don't talk about climate change right now, then we might be too late later to change anything. And then there might not be a place for us to live. It's kind of like scary, but at the same time, I think we also should be hopeful because we still have time right now. We still can change our course. We still can change our lifestyle. So I think that's why I am very passionate about this issue that let's do this together.
Definitely. But by the way, for me, like myself, I live in Riau, this is a kind of city in Sumatra that will, like we are facing haze and also forest fires all of the years, especially because of the El Nino system in our environment. For 5 years, we will face the worst haze ever. Like from 2019 in Riau itself, we reached the most pollutant standard index in the air. Like we breathe with the toxic air, and I face it all of my life, especially 22 years old. I'm 22 years old right now, but the haze itself is happening in Riau, especially from 2022, like 22 years old too. So my like my age is just like the ceremonial things to the haze itself. So this is a really important issues because especially in Pekanbaru, people like burning the forest because they have the purpose, like they want to make like a plantations, some things like that, and that's really sad. Many people are dying because of this air. Like I literally go to the family which she lost her daughters because of this. Oh my god, this is so sad. Really, I just really want to cry to just remember the stories once again. Okay, so
no, totally. That is very understandable. A lot of people lost lives because of this, and then I also have friends, for example, who lives in industrial area or areas where the haze are around, and then they have like lung problems, and it's something that we don't really take into account. So I think what we see, the direct impact of like doing these forest fires and then doing the plantations or even cattle farming is profit. Like forest standing by its own, it doesn't seem like something that's so beneficial for us because it doesn't give us a direct like justification or like gratifications of like this money and capital. But we forget how much money, not just lives, if you want to just talk about money, how much money that we are actually losing as a collective, because then we're losing money for our public health, we're losing money for our quality of our citizens and then the futures of our nations. So I think that's also something that we need to champion. So coming here, I was just like going to talk about like our diet and our culture, but it is something that we also have to champion too. Like how can we talk to the government? How can we demand our rights? How can we pressure them to also talk about these things? Because otherwise the government itself, Indonesia itself, will be losing if we keep on doing this illegal logging and then illegal forest fires.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, we'll come back to the topic again. Do you think that we really, just have one options to just doing like a plant-based diet, or we can demand other options, which is like a sustainable agricultures, industrial agricultures, or any possible things that might be, like possible for us?
This is something that I asked a lot as well, years before. So I've only begun my plant-based journey last year, but I've always had the idea since I was in high school. So that's a long time ago. I'm pretty old, haha. So, so I first watched this documentary called Cowspiracy when I was in high school, and I learned a lot about the impact of, like, again, animal agriculture, especially beef. So I mentioned before the methane, and that's only like one thing about the methane. And the rest of it is like how much water that we need to feed this cows, and then how much resources, like how much other soy, the food that the human can also eat, that we have to feed to the cows so that we can eat some of their parts. Because you grow one cow, you don't eat everything, right? You don't really eat their tails, you don't really eat their bones. Some of the part of the bones you can eat, but for sure not the whole thing. You don't eat like a lot of different parts. So it is very resourceful. It is very, it's taking so much of what we have to some pleasure, which is like this meat. So that's kind of like me, the idea of, okay, I understand that's really bad, but is there a better way? That's your question. Is there a better way to do the farming? Is there a sustainable way? And I hate to tell you this, but I think the most honest answer is no.
Okay.
So in the US, even there's a lot of ideas about this sustainable farming. US, some of like the expensive ones would say that grass-fed beef, some cows are not really fed properly, for example, and then, or like free-range chickens, means that the chickens are not in the small cubicles, but instead they're like free-range, they can just like go around. But all of these things are, most of the time, are just marketing gimmick. So there's no such thing that is like entirely sustainable. Even like all of this organic chicken, free range, they're still being abused to some extent. And then the size of the farms are not just like the label. You know, if you see like the labels of milk, for example, which cows in it, they will be in such a beautiful farm, all greens and everything, you know, like a beautiful Dutch lady beside it, or things like that. But all of these things are not the reality. If we go to the farms themselves, then most of the time chickens are really in tight conditions. Even the free range ones are pretty small. It's just like, you know, some of farms, the chicken cannot even like clap their wings because they're so tight. And then, yeah, even a lot of, if in Indonesia people don't really eat pigs, for example, or pork, but then in the US people eat pork. And then for pigs, the farmers need to like cut their tails so that the tails are not going around, just, you know, without anything. Imagine if your fingers just like being cut just like that, just because, sorry, it's out of the course, but really, it's really hard to have sustainable farming. And even the most sustainable kind of beef or like cow farm, or like beef productions are not sustainable, because we still need those water, the water, we still need to feed these cows. And then again, cows produce methane. And just a brief about the methane thing, it's just like kind of the byproducts. So cows are not really good in their digestive system. So for us, our byproduct is CO2, but the byproducts of cows are methane. And again, this methane trap 21 more heat, kind of, if I'm not mistaken, than CO2. And then cows produce all CO2. So it's really best to avoid cow altogether as part of our diet. because there's no such sustainable cow farming. Nothing. If somebody tells you that, that's a lie. And it's a lie that I was trying to tell myself as well, because I thought that, oh my God, it's so good. How do I give up rendang? And by the way, you can make rendang vegan with like mushroom or like something else. It is totally possible and as yummy as the real rendang can be.
Okay, so we have like several options to just change the meat itself right now, especially. And for the thanks for the product itself. So, like you are talking about how badly the impact of the cows farming and also the chicken farming for our futures and also for our earth. And how about the fish itself? Like many people don't really know that fish really have a bad impact for the environment. And how about that, please? Please explain.
Yeah. Yes, fish. So fish is also really bad to the environment in two ways. So there's two kind of fish, right? In general, the wild ones, wild caught, and then the farm one.
Yeah.
So the wild caught one, a lot of times if you see in like documentaries, a lot of people have huge net that is like so big, especially the commercial one. Okay, we're not talking about like people just like fishing just like this.
Yeah.
Maybe that one is like pretty okay for the environment, but we are living in the era where the demand kind of rules everything, and that is like the commercial fishing. And even in Indonesia, we also have like those huge nets because we are importing the fish to other countries. We also consume a lot of fish ourselves. So the big net, they will go so deep and then sweep the sea floor, which means that everything in it, everything that is on its way will also be taken. So I kind of like read today that every year in the whole world, or in the US, I forgot, but there's 650,000 other animals, including like dolphin, seals, turtles, what else? Sea lions, manta rays are taken as the byproducts or like the bycatch, this accident catches by this wild fish farming.
Okay.
And that's one way. There's another way of fishing. There's like a huge nets going around with a lot of bait instead of like, one person. And that long kind of like fishing baits can go 100 kilometers. And that's the same thing. Turtles are also being caught. Yes. So we are really harming the entire ecosystem by the wild caught fish. And then we're losing more and more marine lives. And sorry, going back to the big one, the big catch, it also kind of, because it comes to the seafloor, it distracts the algae, like the coral and everything. And the plants in the oceans are also missing. So now we have oceans that don't have as much oxygen as it should be. Because again, I told you that there's like two kinds, the wild caught one and also the farm fish, because we also have the farm fish, right? Like the one like near the sea, or like the one that is outside, like not in the sea.
Yes.
So yeah. So one is that even the wild ones, something that I didn't mention before is that every year there's like 50 million sharks are also caught accidentally by this one. So the 6,000 something was other animals, but for shark it's like 50 millions. And another thing is that there's also a study that said that if we eat the same rate of fish as we're eating right now, like the ocean can be lifeless by 2048, and that is like super coming. It's just a couple years away, like we're halfway there. So really, we cannot just say that we're eating a little bit of fish, because no matter how much fish you eat, then you also kill other non-eating fish animals, the fish that you don't really eat, the fish that are just dumped back to the ocean, just being dead, like the turtle, sea lions, and so on. And for the farm fish, a lot of farm fish are carnivorous, and especially the ones that are in demand right now, which what I'm talking about is salmon. So there's like more sushi restaurants. I think it's also kind of like globalizations that we now learn like, oh, salmon and everything. And before, salmon are still something that is pretty expensive in general, but
Yes.
more people can afford it, and that becomes a drive for businesses and commercials to make more farm salmon. So salmons that can be wild caught, they can be also farmed, and then salmon are carnivorous. So by eating even the farm salmon means that you're also kind of like eating the wild fish, because you need to catch the wild fish, the small fish from the oceans, to feed the salmon. So it is again very wasteful. Growing salmon takes a lot of resources, and again, by cutting the wild fish, you also kill other animals. And something else about the salmon is that they're also in poor conditions, pretty tight, and because of that, a lot of salmons get antibiotic. And in fact, in the US, salmons are the kind of animal agriculture that get more antibiotic than any other animal, because they get a lot of other sickness and then diseases. Yeah, and another thing about the fish is that because of the microplastic, the kind of trashes that we dump in the oceans, a lot of microplastics are also part of the fish, and let alone other kind of pollutions that comes to the ocean. So many fish contains heavy metals, even in really small quantities, but over time it can build other diseases that also harm our own health.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's about fish.
And yeah, it's really, interesting to just hear about it, because many people doesn't really know what happened to what they eat and the situations of the animals, and they don't even care sometimes what happened to the animal itself. And yeah, I'm really curious what the first time that you know about these issues and also start to make a change and practice. So now you're a vegan, right? Yeah, and start to practice in your life. Is that being like living in several countries and learn about the cultures and makes you more understand about this, or please?
Let me think. So I think one definite kind of big experience of going around and then understand, oh, like, okay, like what other people are eating all around the world. One is that when I was in India, for example, India is like one of the biggest vegetarian population, not specifically vegan, but then vegetarian. And even that vegetarianism only comes pretty recently in terms of like history. Like most people in India were vegan before, and then they learn about kind of like cheese, kind of like Indian cheese, which means paneer in India. So yeah, and I think it's kind of cool for me like to understand like, wow, a lot of people are actually vegetarian and sometimes even vegan by default. If there's like no cheese product, they're kind of like vegan as well. And then in all of restaurants, there's always options. In any restaurants, they would put like veg and meat, something that I don't see anywhere else. So even before coming to the restaurant, so that's fun. And then another thing is that this myth that when I was going to go to Argentina, that you're not going to survive there being vegan. I'm like, okay, why? And then they say that Argentina is popular with their heavy meat culture, especially steak. So there will be like a lot of steak restaurants everywhere, and then like I'm not even sure if they're going to be like vegan options, but they're not. That's kind of like a myth. Everywhere you go, there's always vegan options, because to be honest, before being vegan, I always thought that, oh wow, if I'm being vegan, like what do I eat? Sorry, there's the fire truck. I'm living in the middle of the city. But going back, there's a lot of vegan options everywhere, because if you think about like what is actually being vegan, what does being vegan actually mean? Like what is being plant-based actually mean? It means that you eat all of like what you need from plant. So just think about it. Okay, there are more plants that are edible than animals that are edible. And even if you're talking about the protein base, there are like more type of beans than there are type of fish that we can eat. So there's really variety. So even in Argentina, for example, I could find everything that I need. There's tofu there. There's Chinatown, so there's tofu. And then there's this soy textured protein, which available when I was in Germany, available when I was in Argentina, very cheap, available in the US. And even I just recently met some friends from Africa continent, Kenya, and other places, that they said that the soy textured protein or textured vegetable protein, if you want to Google it later, it's available so cheap in all of these countries. So yeah, you can research more about later. And then again, if we come back to Indonesia as well, we have tempe and tofu, which tempe is absolutely delicious. It's like one of the best kind of like vegan options out there, something I'm missing a lot. And I'm going to make my own tempeh next week. But I can also buy here, but it's pretty expensive. And yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your questions, but I think my answer is like we can always be vegan everywhere. And it is not that hard, really, seriously.
Okay, good. And do you think that this kind of issues is only the problem of the, like the West country, which usually eat meat like for their lunch and dinner, like steak and something like that? And how about the country like you're also talking about Indonesia and also the Asia itself? And we don't eat meat like in our daily life. We just eat it in like like special day because it was so expensive to just afford a meat and something like that. Do you think about this is also the problem of the people in Asia or not?
Yeah, thank you. Interesting. Sorry. So my friend right here who's also vegan just like kind of like hand me all of the things that we eat. So by the way, just like I have this pink bean, I have garbanzo beans, I have pinto beans, I have lentils, and these are not even all. So there are a lot of beans that I didn't know before. And then even in Indonesia, for sure we have soybeans because we have tofu and tempeh. And then we can also eat the soybean itself. We also have green beans. We also have the kacang polo, so all of the kacang-kacangan that we have. Okay, thank you. And then going back to your question, it is such an excellent question. And the answer is yes and no. So it is, yes, it is a big problem in the West, but it is no, that is exclusively the problem of the West. And I explain why. So in the US, it is like one of the country that eats the most meat. I think particularly because it is a developed country and then people are kind of can afford meat. And at the same time, there's a lot of fast food restaurants that have like burgers and everything. And that become like the daily staple of those who are in poverty, sadly. So it is very interesting that in the US, it is really hard sometimes to get the fresh produce. So they import a lot of produce from Mexico, or like a lot of produce are reserved for the rich. So the poor are eating burgers. So yeah, can you believe that Burger King, for example, here are mostly for like those who are poor, like those who are homeless, eating Burger Kings, and then the rich will not go to Burger Kings or like McDonald's, for example. So it's like, and it's very unhealthy. So again, yes, it is a problem because in the US, people consume a lot of meat, but it is not an exclusive problem in the US. And the reason is that the rest of the world, especially like the developing nations, and more specifically Indonesia as an emerging economy, we have more richer people than ever. A lot of our generations are more kind of like educated and also like have better jobs. We have more middle class, and that kind of like drive the demand of meat productions.
Yes.
Or like animal farming. So I think that's something that we need to start think about, because I agree that not everyone in Indonesia eat meat every day or all the time for breakfast, dinner, lunch and dinner, but it's something that we're growing there. So I told you before that I'm from Blitar, a really small town, and then I moved for my education to West Java, and then I also moved to Jakarta. And in Jakarta, right now, these days, it's really hard to find vegetarian option. unless going to other specific wartegs. And that's also like not kind of a culture anymore. All of my friends, if we want to like meet somewhere, eat somewhere, they will always have like some chicken or like other like meat options. So even like pecel, for example, traditionally pecel, in my opinion, with my mindset being from the village, it was always be like pecel would have tempe and tahu or tofu, and that's about it. But pecel in Jakarta will have meat, and then tofu and tempeh come after. So it is increasingly becoming our culture, something that I'm also scared of, because in other countries as well, that start like that. So a lot of like people in African continents were vegetarian, even vegan. Also, they don't really drink milk before colonizations, and then like the colonizer brought like kettles and everything, and that becoming a culture. And then the same thing with us, that we have all of these different kind of beans, a lot of traditional food that are already vegan or at least vegetarian. And then we're now becoming those meat eaters. And some other proofs to kind of more on the growing demand of animal farming, but also related to COVID to some reasons.
Yes.
So before the pandemic happened, different organizations, including WHO, and then let me see, I took notes because I thought it was very interesting. 1 second. So yeah. So WHO, Food Agricultural Organization for the United Nations, and then World Organization for Animal Health, stated already previously before the pandemic that the increased demand for animal protein, for example, the growth of large poultry productions means like chicken and then ducks, especially chicken in Asia, is one of the main risk factors for a pandemic. So one is that, what I'm trying to say there is that we do have a growing demand for chicken, and then maybe for beef after this. I think chicken is like the most affordable meat, and that's kind of like become like what we mostly eat. But we're getting there as we become richer, because I think before as well we have this mindset that if you have more money, you'll eat meat. I am coming from a poor background as well, so before, if I have like conferences or some events or like some like catering with like meat, I'm like, okay, I'll eat meat as much as possible. But then now it is not good for the environment, and guess what? It's not helpful for my health as well. Meat has a lot of cholesterol and any other things. I would totally recommend to learn like why meat is not as good. Like protein is like one good thing about meat, but there's a lot of other things that's bad about meat for our health. And another thing is that our health in terms of pandemic. Sorry, it's a little bit of moving from your original question.
That's okay.
Is that okay? Yeah. So I think the next question should be like, why, like, how come these poultry productions can be linked to pandemic or animal farming? So the pandemic in itself is the spread of diseases, right, in all over the world, and most of the drive for this spread is because the disease is coming from a virus. And in our history, most of the pandemics are coming from animals. So it's called like the zoonotic disease, meaning that the disease that spread from non-human animals or like from animals to humans. So we have like swine flu a couple years ago, H1N1, the pig flu, and then we also have the flu from chicken. We also have HIV is also part of the virus that is coming from animals. In fact, it's coming from chimpanzees in the African continent. And then we have Ebola, where it's linked to eating bat. And then we also have this mad cow disease from the UK, where farmers feeding dead cattle to cattle, feeding dead cows to other cows. And by the way, for the swine flu, the pig flu is coming from the US. So one is that it can come everywhere. It's not just coming from the Asia. It's not just coming from the China continent. It just happened that it was coming there, the COVID-19. But main drive is that animal exploitation. Because a lot of times in this farming, animals are living in really poor conditions, means that they develop a lot of kind of diseases. And then we put antibiotic in those animals so that they can survive, like the salmon, and then all of these animals, all of the chickens get antibiotic these days. And as the disease progresses and have like they have evolutions on their own, they become like more how to say it, like more immune to the antibiotic. So we keep on like feeding more antibiotic, but the disease kind of like out of controls, and they becomes the virus that strong enough to jump from animals to humans. So yeah, I think it is important for us to also think not only on the environment, but also our own livelihood, because we are all kind of trapped in this pandemic because our exploitations to animals. And it's something that we really have the power to do it. For sure that all of these industries are governed by big companies, big animal industries, but those industries are just fulfilling our demand. If we can demand less of these animals, if we can demand less of the meat in our table and then switch to a more sustainable options, we're not just like saving our planets, but we're also saving our not just like saving our planet in terms of just like the environment, but also saving our planet in terms of its sustainability of our existence. So yeah, that's also, I think, answering how our diet intertwines with our future.
Yes, that's just amazing. And like I really curious about the product of the plant-based things, or like a vegan products in America itself, because is that really easy to just found like the vegan restaurant and also in the groceries? Because especially in my city right now in Pekanbaru, there's very limited access to the food because we only have like one market, which is people will going like a far away to just go to the market, because only one market can that. This is like a Chinese markets, and also one supermarkets that sell like a product of the vegan. And mostly people just say, okay, I think I didn't want to go vegan because it's kind of complicated for me, for myself. And how do you think about this kind of things yourself?
I will answer your first question, like how about being vegan in the States? It is really easy. I think one plus of like one is that there's like a lot more vegans in the US. The growth is so high. I think couple hundreds for the past couple years of the growth of people being vegan. So like the supermarket for me is just like couple of blocks away. I can just like walk for like 5 minutes, and they have like tons of vegan processed food, like those that try to imitate meat. So kind of beefless beef or chickenless chicken. There's also sausages, like a lot of things. They also have tofu, and they also have tempeh even. So that's really not a problem. But again, if we're talking about like, okay, how do I be vegan for myself, like where I'm in, I don't know, Riau, for example, or wherever, even if I'm coming back to Blitar, okay, because for sure, I after I come back home, I will still want to maintain my diet because that's what I'm so happy about. That's where I feel most happy. So again, I think the things is try to know what are the nutritions that I need. So for sure, like you already eat the vegetables and everything, and then think like, okay, what are the protein source that are from the plants? So again, tofu, tempeh is a default easy options. Is it available, tofu and tempeh, in your areas?
Of course, we can find it in many places, in every market.
And that is such a blessing because it's they're just amazing. Tofu and tempeh you can cook in a million ways, and then I would personally not be bored of tempeh. So that's one. And then try to think, okay, like what other beans there are available, because beans are a great source of protein, and there are a lot of kinds. So things that you might not think that as a protein base, because we always think that, okay, like you have your chicken, you have your beef, and then protein checklist. But now try to be more creative. Try to open up like your vocabulary of protein-based food. Okay, what other protein-based food? And I actually like Googled, there's like a lot of food that I didn't really feel like. So in Java, for example, we have this lodeh. I'm not sure if lodeh is something that's available in other places. Do you have something called lodeh, like the soup with like coconut?
Oh, yes. I think
Yeah,
I know it, but I never test it.
I see. So those kind of food also sometimes have beans in it, like red beans or black eye beans.
Okay.
So in Bahasa called kacang polo, I was translating it. So, and then the kacang polo itself sometimes fried and then becomes like a ball. So you can also find the recipe there. I also didn't really recall that, oh, right, I also ate that in Indonesia, but I just feel like, okay, that's just like food. I didn't think that, okay, this is my protein. So I think being vegan means that you have to always learn and then be creative. Don't just rely on processed food, because they're also like less healthy than the real food.
Yes.
So for sure, most of vegan food, even if they are processed, they're healthier than the meat, because they have no cholesterol and then no antibiotic for sure. But they're still processed, like this vegan sausages and everything. So think of like, how can I have like a whole food that is plant-based? How can I have a variety of those? So there's always a way. It might be a little tricky in the beginning, but it's okay as long as you keep on trying. So that's one. And then two is that you don't have to 100% vegan. You don't have to be 100% vegan. I think it's most important that like most of people being 90% vegan, then like only 10% of the population being vegan. It is not as helpful. And maybe some fun fact that I was trying to like give about like what's a nice thing about being vegan is that, so if you eat 1 year without meat, you have the same impact as your friend who don't have any food packaging, like plastic and everything, for 11 years for their carbon footprint. So we're talking much about like plastic and everything, but a lot of times, even when we bring our own bag to grocery stores, even if we try to like bring our own box when we buy food outside, it is really hard to stop plastic altogether, because it just comes in like small things, the package that we are ordering from online shopping and everything, and it's so frustrating. And then even if we eliminate all of those, we need 11 years to have the same impact as not eating meat for a year.
Wow.
So there's a huge change in individual. So we have to really believe in ourselves, and we also have to like believe in others and then help others be, and then grow, and then take the same journey as you. Maybe have, kind of it depends, everyone have their own journey. If you eat meat every day, so maybe think of like, okay, how can I just like meet 3 days in a week instead of like all days? And if you only meet like every celebration, that's good for you. Keep it up. And if not, how can you make the next celebration that you perhaps co-host, or like you host yourself or your family host? Oh, how about like we make it vegan this time? So just have a benchmark for yourself. This is where I am right now. Always think that you can always do better. And then after that, this is where I want to do better. This is how much I want to cut. If I eat meat like once a month, I'll make it like once in 2 months, and so on.
Okay, so we have to, like decrease our consumption's rate of the meat itself. So it's not as hard as going to be vegan. It's something like, many people just, maybe I didn't want just doing that because something like that. But we can decrease our own self, so it will also impact to our futures, right? Amazing.
Yeah,
and
take a small step.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, like for me myself, I really eat meat like only once a year, because it was like we have like eight in Indonesia, so we got a free meat. So I only eat meat once in a in a, like in a year, but it's kind of hard for me to just decrease my consumptions of the chicken, because we can like buy it is so it's so cheap, and also everywhere you're going, if you're in Indonesia, if you're in Ria, in Pekanbaru, there's like ayam geprek, or everything was made from the chicken. And
Exactly.
yes, exactly. And to start to change the mind itself, it's kind of hard. And what do you think, like your solutions, or the things that you want to deliver to the people, like me, or many people that also really want to change, but it's kind of hard to do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one is the thing about your own area of controls. So
Mm-hmm.
people eating or like selling chicken everywhere is something that you cannot control directly. We'll come to that later. But again, there is something that you can control. If you can cook at home, maybe you can cook at home. If you're going to your meeting your friends and then you're committed, okay, I've already eaten chicken last week, but then I'm meeting these friends and then we want to meet and eat, maybe I will invite them to my place, because that's going to like help you reduce your own carbon footprint and then help them reduce their carbon footprint. Or if you really need to meet somewhere, bring your own food, and that's okay. Make that a culture, and then make that as an opportunity to educate others, like, oh, Olivia, why don't you like just buy chicken like with us? Oh, actually I want to decrease my chicken consumption because of this and this and this. So there could be like some interesting discussion. And then another thing is that, so all of like these meat places or like the chicken places, again, it is outside of your control. But then the thing is, now that I have a lot of vegan options, it's because a lot of other vegans out there
Yeah.
demanding for vegan products. So the change begins when more people like you and then more people demand for that change. So maybe by being vegan yourself and then also like inviting others to be like 90% vegan at least, there are more people who are like, wait, why does like a lot of youth now don't eat chicken anymore? Like, what's up, bro? And then they were like, okay, maybe this is what they want. So really, businesses can be driven by us if we demand and then we work on towards those change. So it's okay to feel a little helpless sometimes, but always think, what can I do? What is something that in my locus of control?
Amazing. That's great. So we can educate like one person's, and I think this is the amazing things about the information itself. It can change people, like it can change lifestyles, like it's also happening to you, and that's really amazing, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think something that I was afraid before, it's like, oh, what if like I miss chicken and everything? And
Yeah.
I think one is that do as much as you can, and then what else? A lot of times, while the taste of the meat itself, it is really good because they are fatty. There's a lot of fat there, so it's kind of like addicting in quote unquote in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So once you kind of transition yourself to more plant-based diet, and then you eat more of the plant-based, and then you experiment more, and then try to make them the way that you want, because a lot of food, the secret of like food being good is their seasoning.
Yes.
So try to like be creative and then find your own recipe, like find the recipe that you like, and then that can really like fulfill like your own kind of like one. And then for me myself, something that helped me in the beginning was that to think, wait, I already ate this kind of food, I already know the taste of chicken, and it's okay for me to just like skip it because it's fine, and I'm doing that for a greater good, and that makes me like feel better. And then after like a lot of like a long time not eating animal food, I don't miss it anymore because I am fulfilled with all of the great flavors that I'm tasting today. And I also feel healthier. I think there's a lot of papers out there if you want to talk about like how the vegan and health, like what's the connection. So yes, so there's just like a lot of benefits that as you go along with the journey, you learn more. You learn more how it helps with the environment, maybe from this. I think that one, the most obvious one. And then you learn more about like how it can really help the animal and then their ecosystem and then also their well-being as well. And then how knowing that helps you with your own well-being. And then what else? Also how you can help kind of like avoiding the next pandemic because the one that we have today might not be the last.
Yes, definitely. And I'm really curious about the prices of the vegan product itself. Is that like more expensive or even cheaper than like the food products itself in United States, country that you have been?
So yeah, I think a lot of processed vegan food or like, again, the sausages or like all of the meat imitations and everything, they are so creative. They're really good. They taste super, super like a lot of times this exactly the same that I'm like, wow, I feel so guilty. I feel like this is like real meat. And they're expensive. I think because it is like kind of like modified in some way, but a lot of times, by the way, all of these kind of plant-based innovations, they still have so much lower carbon footprint than the real animal products. So that's one. But yes, they're expensive, those ones. But again, we can come back to the food that are like whole foods. So like all of the beans that I showed you before, they're so cheap. There's like $1 or $2 whereas chicken is like $4 for like the same amount or even more. And then beef would be like $7 to $9. And that's, I think, true across everywhere because just think about it. To grow a cow, people feed soy to the cow.
Yeah.
So the soy itself that I buy, that I eat, supposedly really cheap because, it's for sure the price is lower than the cow. And then even when I get it processed for tofu or tempeh, it is still really cheap because the technology to make tofu and tempeh is really simple. So the short answer is that for the process, like fancy one with like all these marketing materials, they are pretty expensive. Most of the time the same price and a little bit more, but most of them the same price as animal products. But other plant-based, again, think about like, okay, what is the plants that contains protein? What is the one that from the nature that contains protein that are from plants? They're so dead cheap, like really cheap that I was like the cheapest person like among my friends because then my weekly spending is like, wow, Anggun, you're saving so much. I know, and I'm happy, like I'm happy, like I'm full and I have like more money to spend on other things or just like to save.
Yes.
So there you go. And again, tempeh versus chicken, even in Indonesia, I'm sure that you can eat way more tempeh than chicken.
Okay, so it was so interesting what you're saying to us, but like there is a many stigma, like our cultures is that when you are eat tempeh or even tofu, like so every day people will say, oh, you are for the poor, you're for the poor. Okay, why don't you eat some? You need some nutritions. Like people always talk about that in Indonesia. And how do you see that? How to change, like, because this has become our cultures, and how we change the perspective of the people itself, like our own product is the best for us too. Like, please.
Yeah. So it's pretty hard because I was also having that kind of like mindset growing up, like, okay, meat is my opportunity and everything. So again, we have to begin with ourselves and then try to educate others as like why tempeh it's so cool. So by the way, fun fact, tempeh is so widely known among vegan community in the world.
Okay.
Also, even people who are not vegan. And then in the US, a lot of websites about tempeh, they always talk about like tempeh as superfood. So not only that it contains so much protein, so it contains the same protein as beef. Beef is one of the meat like animal products that has the highest protein content. And tempeh, for the same amount of beef, has the same protein content, but they use 10 less resources. So to grow like the same amount of tempeh, you need like, to grow the same amount of like meat, you need like 10 times of resources. You need to grow tempeh. So that's one. And then because it's fermented, it has probiotic that's good for your digestive system and a lot of other things. So that's something that we need to learn, because before we just like know tempeh as okay, just like tempeh and that's all. But I am so proud about tempeh now that I'm abroad, not just because it's tasty, but all of those health benefits. And another things that I'm so proud is that tempeh is like the reasons Indonesians, the reasons we are thriving today. Imagine if we need animal products growing up, if we need animal products as a nation, we're just going to be deprived of nutrition long time ago. But tempeh is kind of like a hero for all the poor, the hero for every one of us, that we're just like as smart, as capable, as mentally and then physically developed as other kids growing up, thanks to tempeh and tofu. So be the lover and then the fan of tempeh yourself first, so that people can also see your passions towards tempeh, towards tofu, and towards plant-based food. It is something that we need to change as a culture, and then we can change it if we start talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And like you already mentioned it, but many people don't even care about our environment issues, and especially if you are talking about what we eat will impact to our futures. Many people like have the perspective that they just like too selfish or to understand about the problem, and how exactly like one things that could make people like we are doing this not only for the futures but also for our health. And the health of the world is as important as our own health, because but there is a kind of things that not many people was concerned about environment issues. And how do you think about this?
I think the question is about, there's like a lot of skeptics out there. There's a lot of people who don't really think about others. So I think, well, that's true. And then that's something, again, there is something that's outside of our control. So think of like, what is something that inside of my control? It's like, one is for sure my own actions.
Yes.
And then something that I do for myself. And then what is something that I can share? Maybe we can share it to our family first, because I think for sure, like, we love our family and then we want them to be healthy as well, especially like our parents or our grandparents. Eating meat is actually also detrimental for their health. So how can they sustain their lives better if they can like eat more plant-based? So, and then we start with like our friends, like how can we invite them to the idea? How can we discuss again the same things that I told you before, the issues, and then how can we help together by changing our diet? And then maybe we can also use our social media platform of like, hey, this is something that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to challenge myself being like vegan for like, I don't know, a week or like a month, or like I have like 90% of my food being vegan, something that's like better than our current diet. So those are the things that we can do. And then there's a lot of skeptics out there. And then if vegans like 20 years ago stop being vegan, so to know that in the US there are people who are being vegan for like years and years, and I'm also like mind blown, like, oh, what did you eat before? I'm sure that people like hate the idea of being vegan. Like now we are talking about it. Now we have more options in the grocery stores. But 10 years ago it is not the reality. 10 years ago we didn't have anything like this. So it takes a few people that have faith and then share with others to bring others to the cause. And then there is potential for us to actually going there. The word vegan, by the way, in Indonesia is like one of the most searched word on Google, I think last year. So there's a report about it that the word vegan is searched by Indonesians in Indonesia. And then there's a lot of vegan restaurants opening in Jakarta, which is like super cool. I told you before, like coming to Jakarta, a lot of options are, the traditional options are chicken and then like meat based. And now being vegan, I kind of like discover, oh, there's like at least 10 Instagram accounts of vegan restaurants in Jakarta that I'm following, because I'm just like dreaming of like eating vegan bakso, vegan sate ayam, vegan everything. There's vegan rawan, like mind blowing. So we are getting there, and then it takes again few of us, our determinations, and then our patience of like explaining to others, because for sure a lot of people will question you, maybe your own parents. It's funny because like before as a kid, like eat more veggies, and then now you eat more veggies and not meat, and then people like, where's the meat? So there's a lot of misconceptions about meat, about nutrition, about being vegan, and it takes a while to get there, but we can go there if we go together.
Yes, definitely amazing. So amazing. And like my other questions, do you know any even like a movement or like actions about these issues, like these plant-based issues, and how do people get more informations about plant-based diet and etc.?
Sorry, you're so cutting off before. Could you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, okay. Do you know any movement of or actions or like a website or social media that people can look out and then learn more about being plant-based diet, and then understand well about these issues and start to make a change for their lifestyles and etc. Please.
So there's a lot of resources for sure out there. You just like need to look for it on Google. There's also a lot of like documentaries. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. At least 3 documentaries that I personally watched already is the Conspiracy, What the Health, and then Game Changer. And I think all of them are available on Netflix. And there's also other documentaries on YouTube, and also kind of like Fox resources or other kind of like noteworthy resources that talk about veganism or like talk about like the harms of animal agriculture. They're also from a good source. And then for the activism and then kind of communities, at least 2 of them that I know and I kind of like met. There's this Extinction Rebellion. So they're kind of like environmental group activists. So they do a lot of like strikes and then demonstrations peacefully, and that are everywhere. So there's Extinction Rebellion in Berlin, Germany. There's also Extinction Rebellion in Jakarta. So it's a really worldwide movement. So really trying to remind us that we need to take actions. We need to keep the companies accountable, and then government to allow that to happen. And another organizations is the Voice of Voiceless, if I'm not mistaken. So what they're doing is that they're championing the animal rights. So they go to the street. So I met them. So they do it a lot all over the world. In Montreal, Canada, I met their kind of movement in New York, where a lot of people wearing black, and then they have like a mask, and then they show the animal kind of cruelty, kind of try to show like what is the back end, because what we see in the supermarket is just like already pieces of meat, and then but we don't know what's the process of it. So that's what they're trying to do, being the voice of the animal, the voice of the voiceless. So those are the 2 things that you can check out. And I'm trying to kind of compile resources as well. If I'm done, I'm not sure when that will be, but I will also try to share with you, and then you can also share to friends about all of these resources. So there you go.
Amazing. So for me myself, I already know about plant-based diet and etc. is from the movement is called as a Countdown to Restrictions from Alice Braga. Yeah, like I found this in a Greenpeace International social media. They shares a lot of things about this, and I just realized this is also important, and it shows it's share, and they're giving like a video about how what we eat can impact to the natures, and how badly the farming like harms the animals. And once again, I have a interesting film that I already watched. The film from Bong Joon-ho, the one that direct the Parasite one. The title of the film is Okja. So here, yes, Okja. So here, like the message or the things that you get from the film is that, you know, how badly the people treat the animals, because for just for to eat, just for eat, just, and then they, you know, like the animals forced to be taken away and far from their family. And you know, this is such a great movies to be watched, and maybe you can watch it, or our listeners right now, this is a great one. And yeah, for the
Yeah, for
last
sure.
uh,
Thank you for the recommendation. And maybe that's something that, you know, you can do, or like the Green Radio line can do together. Maybe you can host a movie watching together. So there's this Netflix party, there's also like YouTube watching party, so you can invite people to watch together.
uh-huh.
So that's another activism that we can do to raise awareness. And I for sure will check that movie out. Thank you.
Yeah, I really cried while watching this movie, exactly. Uh-huh. And yeah, this is our last questions for today, and about your message and also your calls to our listeners, and also uh, from the internationally and the people in Indonesia and stuff.
Wow, there's a lot of audience to call for.
Mm-hmm.
So one is be curious. Even if you don't buy the idea of being vegan or plant-based, like I challenge you, I invite you to be curious, to learn for yourself, because like it is not my responsibility to change like what you eat. It is your own responsibility, and I'm cheering for you. So be curious, learn more, educate yourself, and then two is that start small. There's no big change that just happen overnight. There's some people who just like watch documentary and then they be vegan, and then that's it, that's good. There are also people who try to be vegan altogether and then they stop after a couple like days, couple months, couple years, because they don't learn as much, and then they don't try to educate themselves along the way. They just like, okay, I'm stopping, that's all. So there's a lot of ways, but try to make sure that you take like step by step and then always learn along the way. And then this small step can mean different thing for different people, like I mentioned before. Maybe just cutting your meal, like meat meal per day. If you eat meal, all the meals like lunch, dinner every day, or if you eat meat like once a month, then maybe once 2 months and so on. So start small. And then third one, it's love tempeh. Like seriously, it is such a blessing. It is something that we have to be proud of as Indonesians. It is from Indonesia. Like worldwide, it is known like tempeh from Indonesia. So it is our national heritage. It is such an invention that helps many, help vegans around the world to find a really tasty protein source. But it's also a blessing for our country because it really builds the people. It helps people not to be deficient in protein and nutrition even when they are poor. And also unlearn about this idea that tempeh or tofu only for the poor, because if you really think about it, I would think that it's better to like spend less on food that is equally nutritious and even like more sustainable. So really unlearn a lot of things that you have taught yourself about the meat, about like tofu and tempeh, and then embrace the change. You'll be surprised of the things that you learn along the way, but it will be a good surprises. And it is something that we need to cherish the knowledge, and then it is something that we need to share. So yeah, and then if there's anything, I would love to answer more questions even after like this kind of interview outside. If there's any specific questions regarding of like your journey being more a plant-based eater, I would love to hear like feedback as well of like how I answered the questions, or if there's anything more that we need to cover, or like I can also share in the future. So, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like, you know, I really learned a lot of talking by talking to you. Like, I got a lot of informations that I never got from what I know, and also from you know, like you truly inspires us to just think once again what we already done to our earth, because mostly we don't even know what that we already done to the environment. And that's amazing. And yeah, well, I really thank you for all of the sharing stations, all the of the information that you have already give to us. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. I'm so happy. I'm also like learning more because I most of the time like know this, but also like not by exact numbers. And I'm so happy to share. It is something that also sparks a lot like, oh wow, once I learned it. And I think that's something that you experience today. And I hope also that's something that also inspire anyone who are willing to like listen to like our interview.
Yes.
So thank you again, Livia. And then I hope that you have a good day today. And then it's something really healthy for yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. And stay healthy. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, take care.
Saat ini, Anda sedang mendengarkan Radio Era Baru. Green Radio Line. Beyond the Limit.